Joining us now is Hilary Fordwich, President and founder of Strelmark. Hilary, thank you for joining us. What a day. This is the art of the deal playing out. And just to recap, Donald Trump posted on Truth Social, based on the lack of respect that China has shown to the world's markets, I'm hereby raising the tariff charge to China by the United States of America to 125%, effective immediately. At some point, hopefully in the near future, China will realise that the days of ripping off the USA and other countries is no longer sustainable or acceptable. He goes on to say in his post there, conversely, and based on the fact that more than 75 countries have called representatives of the US to negotiate a solution, and these countries have not retaliated against the US, I've authorised a 90-day pause and a substantially lowered reciprocal tariff during this period of 10%, also effective immediately. Hilary, he's isolating China here. He's uniting countries that are willing to negotiate. Certainly seems like a Trump strategy and how he gets deals done. This is what Caroline Levitt had to say.
As you all know, the president just put out a statement announcing an additional tariff on China. The tariff on China will now go up to 125% because China imprudently decided to retaliate against the United States. And as I said at the podium yesterday, when you punch at the United States of America, President Trump is going to punch back harder. In that same vein, we have had more than 75 countries from around the world reach out to President Trump and his team here at the White House to negotiate better trade deals for the American worker.
Hilary, some people are still confused by Donald Trump's moves. What's your assessment of what he's doing here?
Well, smashing to be back with you. And you were totally right when you called it the art of the deal. And I would add to that the art of the reciprocal trade deal.
Absolutely.
Yes, one of the issues around the world, and I deal with global companies. I'm in different countries, and I've just done some recent media in the UK, and it's very interesting. Let's just take the UK for an example. The first day after the tariffs were announced, they actually, across the UK media, were saying, Trump slaps 10% tariffs on the UK. What none of them were mentioning is that the UK tariffs US goods by 10%. This is a reciprocal tax. It's fair. Of course, I'm speaking as an American taxpayer, but basically is, we'll do unto you as you've done to us. For example, India had 150% tariff, Gabriella, and Trump has brought that down. And Caroline Levitt was totally right. It was 70 countries. Now it's up to about 75 countries that have reached out. Look at areas like the EU. Ursula von der Leyen, she has already capitulated. I actually found it very interesting to hear her talk about tariffs as a tax. It's the only time I've actually ever heard her concerned about taxes. But the EU has now dropped their threat of tariffs, and those tariffs now are balanced out and they have come to their senses. So I think this has been a way of rectifying what had occurred since the Second World War. Basically, the US has been the world's piggy bank. And last but not least, President Trump has said, he actually has stated, he doesn't blame foreign leaders or foreign trade leaders. He blames former US presidents and former US trade representatives who let this imbalance place, Gabriella.
Absolutely. And it's interesting to get your commentary around the media in the UK. Certainly the media here in Australia were freaking out. And it just reminded me of 2020 when there was so much panic. And then we heard all these experts saying that we had to stay indoors and lock down and wear masks. And only a few years later, we actually were told that that was an overreaction. And it's just interesting hearing some of the experts complain about what Donald Trump is doing. And Donald Trump, of course, has a chaotic way of negotiating. But I don't think you can really judge him on that. You have to judge him on the results. And right now he's isolating China. It's probably too early to be celebrating, but let's look at China. What does this mean for them? There's plenty of indications that Beijing is feeling the heat.
Well, yes. And actually, I would say this is a big game of chicken. It's a question of who's going to balk first. And it comes down to one fundamental. Who needs who more? That's what brinkmanship is all about. And Donald Trump knows that China certainly needs the US more than we need China. The only thing I would say, Gabriella, is that onshoring, reshoring of manufacturing to America does take time.
Yes.
Some of these things absolutely don't happen overnight. And I think that's an issue. The other thing is, don't forget, the only real weakness Donald Trump has are two things. won the current polling, but that really doesn't fundamentally matter until the midterms. Well, the midterms usually are 2 years in, so we're 3 months into that. So he's got a tight runway. He needs to have everything balanced out, sane and stable by then. And I thought a very interesting quote, actually, with regard to the stock market and all these global gyrations. Of course, the Dow soared today by 3,000 points, the highest Second World War. But somebody said the only people that get hurt during a roller coaster ride are the people that jump off. Just stay on and hold on tight.
And that's an important message. Do you think Americans are willing to put up with some short-term pain, I suppose, for long-term gain?
Well, first of all, what you just said was very sensible. The question then becomes, are the all-Americans sensible? Number one, I'm not going to speak. Yeah. Number one, I'm not going to speak for the whole nation. But secondly, it depends which party you're in, of course, because Republicans think differently than many Democrats. Actually, I thought during President Trump's speech to the joint House a while ago, when all the Democrats sat for everything, they even sat when he was talking about lowering taxes. I thought, gosh, when taxes do come down, every single registered Democrat should have their taxes remain high because they don't want lower taxes.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so when you ask what people think in the US, it depends which party you are. I
100%.
will say that uncertainty is good for any business, and we just need a bit of. I think that's what we got today.
Yes, very measured. Thank you. Good advice for everyone who's listening.